I'm ready.
Yep.
Trying to stay out of this sun. All right. What's up, Miami Dolphins fans? You got your boy Chris Perkins here. That's my boy David Furones. I am your Dolphins columnist for the Sun Sentinel. Furones is your Dolphins beat writer for the Sun Sentinel. And look, we're at the halfway point of the season. Your Miami Dolphins 5-3 in the AFC playoff picture right now. Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa coming off his best performance of the season, maybe of his career. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, a 138.7 passer rating in that 31-27 victory over Detroit last week. Look, the second half against Detroit was probably the most complete half of the season for the Dolphins, so they have the momentum of that as they head into Sunday's game at Chicago. And since we're heading into the second half of the season, today we will talk about what we've seen from the Dolphins so far, what we expect to see from the Dolphins, and we're going to give out some mid-season awards. So, hey, let's dive in. All right, Furones, tell me about what we've seen from the Dolphins so far in your opinion. You know, the offense and the passing game has been spotty at times. Thank goodness Tyreek Hill is there. Tua has been in and out of the lineup due to concussion, but when he's been in, the dude has been money. Defense has done a pretty admirable job considering all the injuries. What are your thoughts on what we've seen from the Dolphins so far, Furones?
First of all, Perk, happy Halloween. I know Omar on X's and Omar used to like to dress up and everything, but today we're just disguised as 2 legit NFL writers covering the Dolphins and trying to wax about this Miami Dolphins.
Nobody has accused me on Twitter of being legit. Let me just say that.
Right, that's why we come in disguise that way. That's our costume. Right. Yeah, so, I mean, all right, this season for the Dolphins, I mean, the story has been the impact that Tyreek Hill has made, the improvements that Tua has made because he's got Tyreek Hill in there, Jalen Waddle being able to complement him, so now having 2 huge receiving threats. So, I mean, that's first and foremost is having a guy like Tyreek Hill who leads the NFL in receiving yards and is on a record pace, could hit 2,000 at this rate because we are just about at the halfway point. And he's at 961 right now. And Jalen Waddle ranking 4th in the NFL in receiving yards. To have 2 teammates like that, it's actually through 8 games an NFL record, topping the greatest show on turf, Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt with the 2000 Rams. So, I mean, when you're talking about that kind of offensive efficiency, and yes, the passing game in today's NFL has gone to new extremes and new heights, but still so impressive. So overall, I mean, we always felt the defense would be a little bit ahead of the offense starting off just because of how much new movement was coming into the team. But that's been a thrill to watch that combination go. And then the defense up and down a little bit. You have some games where they have won the game for the Dolphins, like you think about the opener against the Patriots, Buffalo, where they had to be on the field in the heat for 90 plays, and they withheld and stood strong. And the game against the Steelers, of course, a 16-10 victory. But then you have a first half like against Detroit, and a team that hadn't scored 2 touchdowns in 2 weeks, or a touchdown in the previous 2 games, is going off in the first half, but able to recover. So seeing a team that's winning in different ways, so that's encouraging.
Yeah, and I will totally agree with you on seeing a team that's winning in different ways. And I think that that's one of the hidden values of the first half of this season is that we've seen them win because of Tua. We've seen them win because the offense explodes in the fourth quarter at Baltimore on the road. We've seen them because they had a complete victory in the second half, or a complete performance in the second half at Detroit. So, and then in the opener against New England, it was just kind of workmanlike victory. But we've seen this team do a whole lot of things. I still don't know that it has its true identity of how it wants to win games. It's still kind of big play, but that's okay. You've still got a half season to get that worked out. And then look, you know, I always talk about all the new that's on this team, and especially with the offense, with the new head coach, the new offensive coordinator, Frank Smith, the two new running backs, the new left tackle, the new center, the new system. We've seen that come up and bite the Dolphins in a couple of ways with them being late getting plays in. Mike McDaniel and Tua talked about that last week, that still kind of creeps up every now and then, and that's something they've got to get ironed out. But look, despite that, you're 5-3. We've seen them go through injury problems and a cluster of injuries to key players at key positions, right? When you look at quarterback and you look at offensive tackle, also at cornerback, but they won, finding different ways to win, going into that roster depth, which was something that I wasn't convinced about early in the season or at the start of the season. But that roster depth, Furones, on the offensive line, they've showed good depth. Now, it hasn't always been pretty, but the offensive line has showed some good depth when you're going that deep into your tackle rotation, and you're managing. That's acceptable. That's okay. So I like what I've seen from this team in a lot of different ways. The coaching, Furones, let's talk a little bit about that. I just mentioned some of the problems getting plays in. It's a rookie head coach, right? And so I guess the penalty thing is probably going to be one of the biggest critiques that you can have of the coaches. Although, the players definitely, it's a players league. So I give the majority of that to the players. I don't know if it's 51% or 60% or 70%. But the coaches definitely share some blame in that. That's probably, at this point, my biggest criticism against the coaches. Now, we did have that 4th and 3 call against Pittsburgh. Mike McDaniel acknowledged that. But really, I think the arrow is pointed up. And the Dolphins have good momentum going into the second half of the season. And a lot of that momentum comes from that second half at Detroit, where, you had a healthy team that was facing a 10-point halftime deficit. They come in, the offense is clicking, the defense shuts down the Lions. So, and you've got to give a lot of credit to coaching for that comeback. Again, it's a players league. Players get most of the credit, but coaches deserve some credit there. Your thoughts on the coaching, Furones?
Yeah, and to touch on some of your earlier points too, you got to remember this team is 5-0 in games that starting quarterback Tua Tagovailoa starts and finishes. So in that 3-game losing streak, and you mentioned the abundance of injuries at multiple positions, key positions in the secondary, on the offensive line, especially at offensive tackle, and then combined with that, you had 4 straight games where a quarterback has to exit a game, and then one of them he's able to come back. The next 3, with different quarterbacks starting, they all have to exit at some point, and you end up finishing with a quarterback that you didn't plan for to begin with. So that's a great challenge, especially mixing into what we're talking about now, coaching, making adjustments on the fly. The penalties are a concern. I think the CBS cameras caught Mike McDaniel, looking back and saying, "Bro, get that bleep fixed." I believe is what if we're lip reading correctly. So I mean, he's trying to get on top of it. It'll be interesting to see if they find different things in practice, something to do to get this team to cut down on those penalties, because it's huge and it could really affect the game. It didn't cost them a game against the Detroit Lions, who are a 1-win team, but once you get through sort of this part of the schedule and you start getting into December, get that fixed, because you don't want this to come and bite you. One, you're playing the Bills, the Patriots late in the season, obviously that West Coast swing between the 49ers and the Chargers. So you definitely need to get that corrected soon. And hey, even during this part of the schedule, you don't want to lose one of the games that you're supposed to win because of a game where you end up with double-digit penalties and you're just limiting all the effective things that you're doing on the field with your offense, with your defense. And coaching-wise, I think we have seen in-game adjustments, because you think about the 2 big comeback victories that they had, down 28-7 against the Ravens at halftime, and then again facing a 21-point deficit going into the fourth quarter as well. And you come all the way back there. Obviously, defensively, they came in with the game plan that time of blitzing Lamar Jackson. He was ready for it. It wasn't like last year's November Thursday night game when that was so effective. So he was ready for it this time. They had to make halftime adjustments. At Detroit, first half, the Lions were getting pretty much whatever they wanted against the Dolphins, and then a shutout in the second half. So I think we're seeing that a little bit throughout the season, and it's impressive that, hey, games where they don't start off the right way, they can make the adjustments and figure it out by halftime, second half come out.
All right, and Furones, today is the trade deadline, 4 o'clock today. Before we go to Twitter and answer a Twitter question, and again, thank you guys for always responding when we request Twitter questions. We appreciate that because you're a big part of this show. Furones, we're talking about what we've seen from the Dolphins in the first half of the season. We mentioned the penalties. We got to mention the turnover margin, right? They're -3. And that's, that's a key number. Mike McDaniel said that's the most important number that he looks at, obviously behind the record, which is a positive 5-3. But they're -3 there. And look, I'm not a guy who looks at the at the point differential. I think that's overblown. But if I'm not mistaken, the Dolphins are -14. I'm not concerned about that. I'm more concerned about -3 in turnover margin. Dolphins lose the turnover battle 1-0 last week against Detroit. But, I think the offense is going to be able to get things under control. I'd like to see the defense be able to produce more turnovers. And so I think that's going to be something that I'm looking for in the second half of the season. Now, look, you were able to keep Detroit scoreless in the second half without producing a turnover, but it just helps you play complementary football. It helps the game. It makes life so much easier when you can produce those turnovers. This defense ought to be able to do it. Again, I understand that you've had injury problems, right? And especially in that secondary. And, your pass rush, it needs some help. And we're going to talk about that with our trade deadline question. But, I've just got to see these turnovers and come on a more consistent basis, just like I have to see the touchdowns come at a more consistent basis. This team has found ways to win despite all of that stuff, but let's make life a little bit easier on ourselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of those issues came up in that 3-game losing streak. So the overall number kind of gets skewed a little bit because, they didn't force a turnover in any of those losses. And then obviously they were turning the ball over. So every turnover just kind of worked against that turnover margin. Started the season on a good note, 3-0 winning against week 1 in the turnover battle, forced 3 and then didn't turn the ball over. And then we didn't see any week 2. And then week 3, they had the 1, but then went on a long stretch until you had the 3 interception game against the Steelers with a couple of backup defensive backs, which is another impressive thing that Noah Benogany and Justin Bethel were able to step in when they needed to. And then now you're getting to a point where Kader Kohou and Keon Crossan are coming back to help with that. You're already still missing Byron Jones and now Nick Needham for the season. So, turnovers, it was a big part in that 3-game losing streak. Now, you didn't see one in this last win, but to be able to get 2 back-to-back wins coming off that stretch, one where you did force turnovers, one that you didn't, again, kind of speaks to able to win in different ways. This team has prided itself on forcing turnovers so much in recent years under Josh Boyer, before when he also had Brian Flores with him. So it's something that the defense wants to get back to, I'm sure. And it's part of, we speak about identity. The defensive identity, this team wants it to be to force a lot of turnovers and create havoc and put guys in position to do it. It starts with stopping the run so that teams can't just run all over you, and then putting them in difficult passing situations. And then even if you don't have maybe the trust in your cornerbacks to blitz the safeties as much as you would, the blitz percentage overall is kind of close to what it was last year, but you're not maybe being as aggressive. But with bringing defensive backs and safeties as often as Boyer did in the past. But it's a part of this defense that wants to be implemented, and it's a huge aspect of this team going forward. If they could flip that switch, then the sky would be the limit.
Yeah, and look, we're talking a little bit of defense here, so let's go to our Twitter question. And it comes to us from Miami for Life 305, and the question is, you think Chubb will happen? Now, Denver edge rusher Bradley Chubb is supposedly on the trading block, and there's chatter out there that the Dolphins are one of the teams that are interested in Chubb. He's in the final year of a $7.1 million deal, so And supposedly Denver is seeking a first-round pick in this deal. So really, you would rent Chubb for the final, 9 games in the Dolphins' case of the season for $7 million. You would have to redo his contract, and and then you have to give up a first-round pick. Now that's a lot. That's a heavy price. And we saw the Dave Hyde's excellent column in the Sun Sentinel. Hyde is brilliant writer, always does a great job. And Dave Hyde's point was, if the Dolphins think they're contenders, you make this move. I don't think the Dolphins are that close to make that move. But Hyde seems to think that. Well, I guess Hyde said if the Dolphins think that's the case, they should make the move. I don't like the move because Bradley Chubb is not on the field enough. He's had some injury issues. That's the main thing with me. Giving up that first round pick is also another big thing. So I would say no, I wouldn't make that deal. You need pass rush help, but maybe that comes from the back end. At this point, I'm not counting on Byron Jones. By the way, Austin Jackson activated today, added to the 53 right tackle. But let's go back to Bradley Chubb. I say no. Furones, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a little bit in between. So we got one for yes from Hyde, one for no from you. I do look at the injury history as well. He had the ACL in 2019, did bounce back well from that, had his Pro Bowl season in 2020, and then the ankle injury in 2021, missed half the year because of that. But again, showing that he could bounce back from it. He's off to a strong start, 5.5 sacks so far this year, which would lead the Dolphins because they just haven't had that much of a pass rush going. Jalen Phillips has gotten it going in recent games. Well, he's always kind of had the win rate. He's been winning at the line of scrimmage, but now it has been translating to sacks recently. We saw that nice one from Zach Sealer in Detroit, although it was the only one, if I'm not mistaken, from that game. So, yeah, you could use the help. Now, Andrew Van Ginkel has been coming along at outside linebacker as well. Melvin Ingram, AFC Defensive Player of the Month in September. So maybe slow down a little bit from that pace that he was on this past month. But so do you think you have enough, especially if now Emmanuel Ogbah, you were counting on him to provide a lot of the pass rush? He was a team sack leader last year, had 9 sacks each of the past 2 seasons, and it hasn't been there from him. Granted, he has been dealing with that back issue as well. So maybe the answer is on the team. I wouldn't go as far. Here's my answer. I wouldn't go as far as a first-round pick if that is indeed the price. But if you get him for the Roquan Smith price of, what was that, a second and a fifth,
yep.
Then sure, go for it. If you can, like the Bears traded away to the Ravens for the inside linebacker, who the Dolphins don't have to face now. So they face the Ravens without Roquan Smith, and now they face the Bears also without Roquan Smith. So effective there. But if you get a similar price to that, then maybe you do want to pull the trigger if you're at a point where you don't feel Ogbah will get back to the type of pass rusher we've seen in the past 2 years, and you just don't have enough between him, Phillips, Van Ginkel on the edge, Ingram, and you did lose Trey Flowers for the season earlier in the year. After we had just seen him, it was on a play where he did make an impact and almost had a safety, forcing an incomplete pass in the end zone, rushing Kirk Cousins in that Vikings game.
Hey, we got a question from the chat, Furones, from Grandizer 12. What are the last-minute trade rumors involving the Dolphins that both of you have heard? Trade rumors that are not normal. I haven't heard any abnormal trade rumors. The Bradley Chubb and Mike Gesicki and Teddy Bridgewater, Cedric Wilson. Those are some names that we've heard out there through chatter. But I haven't seen anything. Some fans have mentioned Kareem Hunt, the running back from Cleveland. Would the Dolphins be interested in him? But I haven't heard anything that's not the normal. Those that I all mentioned have been the normal. I haven't heard anything that's really crazy that you would go, wow, I had no idea the Dolphins would be talking about sending him away or acquiring him. Have you heard anything that's just really crazy, Furones?
Yeah, no, I mean, the names you mentioned, possibly going for a cornerback, obviously, because of the need there with the injury need. I think some fans have mentioned Joe Hayden, who is also retired, and we have not heard. Yeah, we have not heard any.
We haven't heard anything to think that he's going to come out of retirement and join the Dolphins. Just thought I would throw that. That would probably be, and that's from fans. I don't know if the Dolphins have actually made that call, but that would probably be the most abnormal one, right? From chatter.
I think anything under the radar that people aren't already talking about, teams at this time, they don't want to kind of tip everyone else off to what they might be looking into, and then another team swoops in. So that's part of the game as well. Then all of a sudden you find out at 3:55, oh, they were in on this guy the whole time. So that's part of the game as well this time of year.
Yeah. So, all right. So that'll wrap that up, Furones. And let's go into our next segment, which, is probably going to generate some chatter here, but it's the Dolphins Midseason Awards. And so we're going to talk Team MVP. We're going to talk Team Coach of the Year, Most Improved, Most Productive Unit/Group, and Surprise of the Year. So, Furones, let's start it off at the top, man. The MVP. To me, it's Tyreek Hill. And look, there's a lot of other outstanding performers this year. Tua is balling. 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 112 passer rating, I believe it is. He's been outstanding. Terron Armstead, been outstanding. He misses the Vikings game, and you have 6 sacks and 13 quarterback hits. He missed most of the Jets game, and Xavier Howard, another guy who could be mentioned for this, missed the Jets game and the fourth quarter of the Cincinnati game. So in that Jets game, you essentially were without Tua, X, and Terron. You were without X for the fourth quarter of Cincinnati, and you've been without Tua for quite a bit of the time. Tyreek has been there. Jalen Waddle, another name for MVP. He's been there, but to me, it's Tyreek. He's the guy with the 961 yards receiving. He could set the NFL record, which I believe is it's 1964 or 1946.
In 1964, 1,964, Calvin Johnson.
We talked about that before the show, and I still can't get it straight. But Tyreek is at, I believe, 69 receptions. I believe the NFL record is 149 by Michael Thomas. So, Tyreek is a little bit less than halfway there. I mean, here's a guy who could establish NFL records for receptions and receiving yards. Only has 2 touchdowns, but that's not his fault. Tyreek Hill is my choice for team MVP. Furones, who you got?
Boy, you know what? I'm going to go against you. No, there's no way. You got to go with Tyreek Hill. He's the number one option by far and away. And sure, you can talk about a little bit the other guys. Waddle's having a tremendous season. He was voted by the media as team MVP last year, although my vote for last season's team did go to Xavier Howard, and I know all of our Sun Sentinel writers did also go that way. So it was a very close vote between him and Howard last year. I thought about all the game-changing plays that he made, especially in that win streak and then that first win that they had. But, I mean, this year it's got to be Tyreek Hill, just on a torrid pace. I remember a lot of conversation before the season about, can the Dolphins have 2 receivers go for 1,000 receiving yards? Yeah. And I was there thinking, okay, yeah, I mean, probably just because these players are at that caliber. Waddle, although he had 104 receptions last season, he barely eclipsed the 1,000 receiving yard mark. But so I was thinking, okay, well, if a lot of more targets are going to go to Hill, can he still get there? But I mean, they've just been able to complement each other so well. They're both going to blow right past that mark by far and away. So, and that's because of the impact that Tyreek Hill makes, not only what he produces himself and how he can get open over the top, or defenders are so consumed with covering over the top in those 2 high looks that he can just come back 30 yards down the field, and they have their backs turned. He can easily just make these catches like he's running 10-yard outs, 30 yards down the field, because the defense is just playing so far back. And then just the way he manipulates coverages, wherever he goes, then Waddle, if he goes in the other direction, he's going to be open because of the coverage that Tyreek Hill draws. I think we saw a couple of instances of that in the game against the Lions, and Waddle was able to score 2 touchdowns. So even if Tyreek Hill's numbers are down as far as touchdowns are concerned and everything else is through the roof, then a lot of the touchdowns that others have been able to score has also been because of the way the coverage is so heavily drawn to Tyreek Hill. MVP,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said there. Tyreek has been absolutely amazing, and you just can't defend the guy. I mean, there's just no way to defend the guy. All right, let's go to Coach of the Year. Lot of candidates here. You've got Josh Boyer, the defensive coordinator. You've got Mike McDaniel, the head coach. You've got Sam Madison, the cornerbacks coach. What about Darrell Bevel, the quarterback coach? You've got a lot of good candidates here. You know me, I love this defense, and the secondary has been incredible. I mean, the depth and the answers that they've been able to find. You mentioned how they won the Pittsburgh game, the Bethel interception, the Noah Igbenogany interception. But I'm going to go with Josh Boyer, the overall defensive coach, as the half-season coach of the year. And look, I think with all the injuries that they've had, the way that they've been able to sustain and make plays has been very impressive. Mike McDaniel, as the head coach, has been really, really good. You know, we're splitting hairs here, but he's going to have to carry the burden of the penalties. So in a close and look, Sam Madison might be my second choice, because the cornerbacks have really done a fantastic job of just finding answers, and Sam and Josh Boyer matching player to system and being able to put these guys in position to make plays. Again, it's a players league, so the majority of the credit goes to the players. But wow, Sam Madison, great job with those corners. But I'm going with Josh Boyer as my Dolphins mid-season coach of the year. Your choice, Furones.
Before I give you my answer, we have some trade deadline news not involving the Dolphins. Don't start freaking out on the show. T.J. Hawkinson, tight end for the Lions, was traded within the division to the Vikings after the Vikings had their tight end Irv Smith go down with injury. So that's interesting. We just saw him actually had a big 58-yard catch against the Lions, or against the Dolphins, playing for the Lions. So trade within the division. So that's kind of interesting. So coach of the year we were talking about, right? Yep. So Boyer's interesting because the defense maybe hasn't been as consistent as you would want. So that's why I wouldn't go that route. I would give it to head coach Mike McDaniel. I think as a first-year head coach, even though you mentioned some of the things like penalties in his first season being really high right now, but I think he has overcome a lot of adversity on this team. Use the term that a lot of football people like to always use, adversity, like losing a player for a half is an adverse situation. Being down by a touchdown is so adverse, but it really has been, especially that 3-game losing streak. I mean, concussion protocol issues, going through several games where quarterback that you prepare all week for does not finish a game. Every game that they've lost has been that scenario exactly. Making multiple comebacks from big deficits. We're talking about 2 touchdowns against the Lions, 3 touchdowns against the Ravens. So always bringing that out of the team, that fight. So he has a way with these players. I think you can see it. It's very evident for sure. And I think it has been refreshing for a lot of the players. And he has meshed really well with Tua coming in here, especially Tyreek, letting him kind of be himself. And you definitely see that in Tyreek's personality. And the way he's just playing loose, it translates to the field as well. So I would say overall, Mike McDaniel, what he's been able to get out of this team, the way he has instilled some fight motivation from this roster, I'm going to go with the head man, Mike McDaniel.
All right. And I probably should have mentioned Wes Welker, the wide receivers
Definitely.
coach. Yeah. A
couple of guys that played in Welker and Sam Madison. I'll back you up on that as well, because getting those backup corners that had to come and get thrown in there, like Noah Igbenogany, Justin Bethel, who is Justin Bethel, a special teams guy, ends up making a huge play in that Pittsburgh win. Noah Igbenogany seals that win after all the struggles that he had been through his first 2+ years. And really, despite all these injuries, not getting elevated up to it reached that point, and then to make that big play, that's a testament to how Sam Madison has prepared his unit.
Yeah, and Kader Kohu also. Yeah.
Right. Kohu, of course, undrafted guy.
Right. All right, let's go to most improved here. And this is a real tough one that I'll probably make a change on mine. But among the top candidates, Tua Tagovailoa, which, I mean, come on, we know what that guy has done. You just mentioned Noah Igbenogany, and he's had a couple of rough years. He's played well in spots this year. That huge interception that won the Pittsburgh game. what about Christian Wilkins? He's a guy who doesn't get a whole lot of publicity outwardly, but he has been like a rock on the interior defensive line, doing a great job anchoring that run defense. Zach Sealer, he's a guy who has been involved in a lot of action, and last week the 2 passes broken up, and then the sack. So a lot of good candidates there. Originally, I had Noah, but I think I've got to go with Tua here. And you know, the dude has just been balling. Okay, he's just been balling, and the times that he has started and finished games, you know, the Dolphins obviously are undefeated. So I think I'm going to go with Tua. I had Noah because of the recency bias, perhaps, but full body of work, I can't go against Tua, can I? I'm going with Tua.
Right. Yeah. Smart move, because I know in our rundown you had Noah. Yeah,
I did.
And I'm going with Tua as well. I think we've seen him take his game to another level here. Everyone was talking about third-year leap. Can we see it now? Granted, he does have an elite receiving tandem on this group. So yeah, that helps you a lot. But he hasn't fallen short of any expectations, only exceeded expectations working with these guys. And we're seeing just him expand on everything we already knew he did well: the accuracy, ball placement, throwing with anticipation. And then now at times we got to see him still hit the downfield throw a little bit. I know there was one when Hill was running past the Lions defense and he couldn't really fully step in. There was a guy in his face and he slinged it out there. Tyreek Hill had to come back, but when you got a guy like Tyreek Hill, he's going to go make that catch. So Tua knows that, so he's throwing that aware of who he's got around him. Yeah, if you were originally going to say Noah, I think it was just there was one game there, so probably not just off of one game. I would say if he was kind of incorporating himself into a starter role where like Kader Kohou did, and he was coming off like Noah's previous 2 years and getting to where Kader Kohou is now on the depth chart, then maybe I might say him. And I think you mentioned Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer. I would say I already saw a lot of that last year for sure. Yeah. So Wilkins put up huge numbers for a defensive lineman to have, I forget the number, but how many tackles he had. That was very impressive. And Zach Sealer was an absolute beast last year and before that as well. So, but yeah, I mean, definitely continuing to take steps. So you love to see that. But as far as most improved, yeah, I mean, I'll ride it with Tua.
Yeah, and look, one thing that I didn't mention about Tua last week, one of maybe his best decision-making games, right? When you look at what he did under pressure, when you look at just the throws, we had talked previously about the near interceptions against Pittsburgh. That wasn't the case against Detroit. And then sliding. Having the wisdom to slide, that is part of decision-making. And Tua did a great job with that and showed great improvement, great awareness. So, just another reason for me to go with Tua on that.
He's coachable. He listens to coaching. He tried to get those first downs twice, failed against the Steelers, and took some unnecessary hits. They told him he's got to slide. He started sliding.
Yep. So credit to Tua there. All right. Most productive unit / group. You've got the quarterbacks who you've gone 3 deep, and man, I mean, Tua is the only quarterback who has started and finished a game for this team, right? I think that's true off the top of my head.
Right. Yeah.
Skyler didn't and Teddy Bridgewater didn't. So quarterbacks have gone pretty deep into their rotation, as deep as you can go, in fact. The defensive backs, they have been really good as a unit / group. We've talked about how deep they've gone and they've made some plays. I'm going to throw in the defensive coaches here also because they have been, they're not players, but they have been a productive unit / group. But as the winner here, as my selection, I'm going to go with the wide receivers. And it's easy to cherry pick off the top. But look, Trent Sherfield and River Craycraft have also been productive, right? I mean, Craycraft, 2 touchdowns, I believe, both of them blocking extremely well. Trent Sherfield should have had a touchdown last week. Right. People have been asking why we haven't asked Mike McDaniel about challenging that call. And we ran out of time in these press conferences. We've got other stuff to ask about. But Sherfield got robbed of a touchdown. But the receivers have done a very good job showing some depth there. Look, Eric Ezukama, the 4th-round pick, can't even get on the field. Cedric Wilson having problems getting touches. So what you found in Sherfield and Craycraft, to me, has been pretty impressive. So I'm going to go with the wide receiver group. And look, I offensive line, could you mention them? Maybe not. The tackles have maybe most productive. But anyway, your selection, Furones.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going wide receivers, and based on what Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have done, and you could give me any wide receivers. Perk, me and you could be number 3 and number 4. I'll be in the slot, and then I'll still say this wide receivers group is the top unit on this team. I mean, it's a record-setting tandem so far through 8 games. So you got to go with them, and and that's despite that. Cedric Wilson, it has been underwhelming. He hasn't been on the field. It got the rib injury to deal with early on, and then hasn't been able to really come back. Now getting involved in the punt return game, but even though your supposed number 3 receiving option, that not counting the tight ends, because obviously you got Gesicki, and you thought Chase Edmonds would maybe catch the ball out of the backfield more, but as far as number 3 receiving option, and then even though he's been kind of down, but you've gotten the production out of Sherfield, the play, the River Craycraft. I mean, these are Mike McDaniel, Wes Welker guys from San Francisco as well, so they know him as well, and they know. And those receivers know what those coaches look for, and I think it has shown up on the field. And it would be if we could start seeing maybe at some point. It doesn't have to be now because it's going so well, but yeah, I would like to see what Eric Ezukama can do. Now that might take some injuries, which you don't want to happen, so maybe not. But I thought he had a great preseason and moments in camp, and Braylon Sanders came up off the practice squad. You saw him with a lot of moments in training camp as well and in the preseason, but obviously had the fumble on his first career catch, and I know he took that one hard. But yeah, I mean, based on Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle alone, no matter who else was producing a receiver, you got to go with the receivers as the most productive unit on this team.
Yeah, I would agree. And look, Furones, before we get to our final category, which is the surprise of the year, let's go back out to Twitter. And this Twitter question comes to us from Silver Hornet. And the question is, has Tyreek exceeded your expectations? And if he continues on this pace, is he an MVP candidate? Yeah, he has. And look, we know that Tyreek is a baller, right? This is the guy on this team that is most on his way to Canton, right? That I'm not saying that he's there, but I'm saying he's most on his way. Like the dude comes with incredible credentials. We know what Tyreek can do, but when you're on pace to kind of threaten the league receptions record and the league receiving yards record, yeah, you've kind of exceeded my expectations. Is he on pace for an MVP candidate? I would say that largely depends on how the Dolphins finish. Now, if the Dolphins win out and Tyreek gets both of those, then you're going to have to say yes. But I think it's very hard for a receiver to get MVP. So the team would have to do something special in addition to Tyreek doing something special. But Furones, has he exceeded your expectations?
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say it is very difficult for a wide receiver. Actually, has a wide receiver even won an
Not
NFL
to my knowledge.
Yeah, I tried to pull up a quick list, and I don't think I see one. Boy, yeah, the 1982 season when a kicker won it for Washington, Mark Mosley.
Yeah.
I wasn't alive. Do you remember that?
I actually do. That was my sophomore year of high school.
What happened there? How did that happen? Who let that happen?
I passed 9th grade. That's how I got to it.
Oh, no, I'm not you. I'm talking about how did the NFL allow a kicker? Well, yeah, I mean, it's very quarterback heavy, and the last time a non-quarterback won it was Adrian Peterson in 2012, and that was a historic season as well. LaDainian Tomlinson as a running back, Sean Alexander, and that takes you through 2000. Marshall Faulk, but everyone else has been a quarterback, so it is very difficult. But boy, if he puts together a historic season, breaks a record, and the Dolphins have some. They get into, I don't know if they can win the division and get into one of the top 4 because that also takes Buffalo because you're probably looking at a wild card. But, maybe he gets into consideration high in the voting, but still very difficult to actually win the MVP.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to our final Dolphins midseason award category, and that's surprise of the year. A lot of candidates here, and this could be, on either side of the line, good or bad. Look, the undrafted rookies outshining the rookie draftees. That's a pretty big one right there. I did not expect to see that at all. You mentioned Braylon Sanders as the most recent undrafted rookie to play, but Kader Kohou at cornerback, Verone McKinley at safety, Ben Stilley on the defensive line came up 2 weeks ago, I guess, against Minnesota. So the undrafted rookies have done a pretty good job.
Steelers game.
Oh, Steelers game. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So they've done that. I didn't expect them to, do at this point. I would have to say they've done better than the rookie draftees. And Skylar Thompson, he made a start. So that's probably the biggest thing the rookies have going for them. Another surprise, the penalties. We talked about the penalties earlier. I don't think anybody expected that. This is not a knucklehead team. It's not a dumb team, but these penalties keep happening. So that's a surprise. The injuries to all those key players at the key positions at the same time, quarterback, and offensive tackle. That was a big surprise also. But you know me, I ride with the defense. I'm going with the secondary as the surprise of the year. They keep producing despite all these injuries. So I'm going to go with the secondary as the surprise of the year at midseason. Furones, who you got?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. Although we did see that first half, the secondary didn't look too good against the Lions.
They're not perfect.
Yeah. So maybe some recency bias in that. I won't go that way. But hey, they did rebound in the second half. Granted, kept the ball away from the Lions offense as well. And that was a huge key. Oh, and the Lions setting themselves up for a 1st and 30 with 3 consecutive penalties.
Wait a minute. I probably surprise of the year, fourth quarter against Baltimore, right?
Oh, yeah. Why are we talking
wins.
about that? Yeah, definitely.
That probably wins, but go ahead and make your pick now. Yeah, I've got to put that fourth quarter against Baltimore up there. My bad for forgetting that.
What are we allowed to choose from? Because there's so many different ways you could find a surprise.
It's loaded. It's loaded.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good one. I mean, out of the ones you mentioned initially, then I'll probably go with undrafted rookies getting in there. I mean, that's a testament to the talent evaluation here with the Miami Dolphins, Chris Greer and his scouting team, Marvin Allen, etc. Just finding these guys, these gems. I mean, Kader Kohou, Texas A&M Commerce, and then he makes the roster. And not only does he make the roster, and he's just an end of the depth chart cornerback. Now he's producing. He's in there since week 1 when the Dolphins were relatively healthy. It was just Byron Jones missing at that point, but able to see the field. And then now he's to the point where he's starting opposite Xavier Howard because of these injuries and holding his own. He was in coverage on that 4th down when the Lions needed 1 yard and they decided to take a deep shot instead, one-on-one coverage and a lot of contact. But Kohou told me in the locker room, Reynolds probably offensive pass interference against him, where he was trying to go into Kohou and create the contact for then the separation. Couldn't get to the ball because of it. But to see Kohou, Verone McKinley make his first start, he was playing off the ball, so that was interesting. Now Javon Holland getting into the box. That dynamic, as opposed to the dynamic when Holland was working with Brandon Jones. Now that Brandon Jones is out for the season, so might have to find a spot on the active roster permanently for Verone McKinley now because that might be the role that they're going with. Hey, how about a surprise? Just Sunday afternoon. Or Sunday morning, Eric Rowe not being active, especially with Brandon Jones out. So deciding to go with Verone McKinley, but then not only that, not using Rowe at all because special teams played into the decision-making process into the CBS broadcast. So that was interesting to not even have Rowe even in those dime packages that he had been playing in previously. So, but yeah, I'll go with the undrafted rookies for that one.
Yeah. All right. A lot of areas to choose from there. All right, Furones. So that wraps up the Dolphins mid-season awards. Let's go into our final segment of Dolphins Deep Dive, and that's going to be predictions for the second half of the season and our prediction for the Dolphins-Bears game on Sunday, Dolphins at Chicago. But first, we're going to go out to Twitter, and we're going to go for our Twitter question. for this segment. And again, thank you guys for responding with these Twitter questions when we ask. We always appreciate it. This one comes from G. Ortega 2386. The question is, can this team compete for an AFC championship? I've got to see some more from different elements of this team. The run game is one of those elements that I need to see more from. We need to see them play smarter, reduce the penalties. We need to see that turnover margin increase. It's currently at -3. So there are a few things there. I think it's a year early for this team to talk about competing for the AFC championship right now when we're at the midway point of this season. We'll see what happens in the second half of the season, but I would need to see some big improvements to consider them as a team that could make it through the playoffs and compete with what would appear to be Buffalo, Kansas City at this point. Your thoughts, Furones?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's so difficult because Buffalo appears primed to really roll this season and win the division. Once you don't win the division, then you are a wild card team and you're facing a road trek through the playoffs. And for the Miami Dolphins, that means, contrary to how they took advantage of the hometown heat and humidity against the Buffalo Bills in Week 3, that means the road to the Super Bowl would go through Buffalo eventually. It could go through Kansas City, some environments that are going to be very cold in January. So I won't make any drastic statements like AFC Championship bound, unless if I see December 18th at the Buffalo Bills, they go in there and they take down the Bills and end up with a season sweep, then yes, absolutely. You could say, yeah, now they are on track to do something like that. But until that time, and you're really not going to see enough to go that far through this stretch of the schedule as much as, it's the NFL. Any given Sunday, you have to make sure you win against all these teams. But these are teams that the Dolphins should beat. I know we looked at the at Chicago game a week back and saw what they did on Monday Night Football against the Patriots. And so, yeah, the Bears might have that kind of ceiling. But now they just traded away Roquan Smith. That defense, we just saw that defense give up 48, 49 points against the Cowboys. So the Dolphins should be able to take advantage of it. And it seems like it won't be that cold in Chicago this Sunday. So, I wouldn't make any huge statement like that until I see late in the year. If they still have 3 losses after that at Buffalo game, then, now we can start talking about that. Until then, let's cool it because we're looking at hopes for a wild card berth, and then it'll be difficult going through the road environments to get to the Super Bowl.
All right, Furones. So second half of the season, among the things we're going to be looking for is the health situation going to improve, right? Byron Jones, Liam Eichenberg, Austin Jackson. Hopefully they don't lose key players at the same time. Hopefully the injury situation has peaked. But the health situation is going to be one big key factor. Another big key factor, they've got 5 road games among the last 9 games on the schedule, including a 3-game road stretch of at the 49ers, at the Chargers, at Buffalo. So it's going to be a very, very treacherous road these last 9 games. I could see this team getting a wild card berth. I definitely could. We need to see some more consistency, but I could see them getting a wild card berth, and I think it would start with a victory at Chicago. I'm going Dolphins 21-18. Chicago has a good run game. Chicago has a couple of young players in that secondary that you have to keep an eye on, but I think the Dolphins are going to be able to go up there and come away with a road victory. So I'm going Dolphins 21-18, and that kicks off a good second half stretch of the season. Your thoughts, Furones?
Okay, we're already going with the prediction?
Yeah, we're going to roll them all into one, baby.
Rolling into it.
That's it.
All right. So, I'll go Dolphins 21-18. Huh? Yeah. How do you get to 18? Is it only field goals? Are they kicking 6 field goals? Or is there some weird two-point conversion action going on?
Yeah. Well, they'll fit. That's the Bears' problem. That's not my problem. I'm taking Dolphins by 3. Yeah. They scored 21 for us. That's the rest of it is up to the Bears. Out of my hands.
I'll go a little bit more traditional of a football score, but higher scoring. I think the Dolphins are able to take advantage of this defense. No longer has Roquan Smith. Already had been without Khalil Mack over there. So I'm going Dolphins 34, and I'll say Bears 24. So I think it won't be like the dome environment that the Dolphins were just in, fast track there. But at least it doesn't seem like it's going to be too cold. Early November game. So I think the Dolphins offense will get going, take advantage of that Chicago defense that ranks low in several categories. And Justin Fields, he's been up and down, has shown some flashes. I think he has some moments, but then ultimately the Dolphins defense is able to contain him. So 34-24, I'll say the Dolphins win a road game and cover on the road against an NFC North foe.
There you go, man. All right. So that's the Dolphins deep dive for this week. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your boy Perk. That's your boy David Furones. Check us out next time at sunsentinel.com.